Jordan Peterson is a Nazi. Of course, this is something that we've heard for years now. Ever since Jordan Peterson's psychology lectures started getting a whole bunch of views online back in, I think, 2014 or 2015, and he started to become known for being a self-help guy. And regardless about what you think of his takes on philosophy or religion, his self-help advice generally does seem to work. But politically, he represents a fundamentally liberal point of view, which got him into some trouble when he spoke out against the compelled speech legislation happening in Canada at the time. So the left calls him a fascist, not because he actually is a fascist, but because the left is so far off the political spectrum that liberals and fascists look to be the exact same thing. So this happened a couple days ago, where Jordan Peterson says, "What the hell?" to a segment of a Captain America comic where Red Skull is portrayed as a YouTuber, and I can't believe we're talking about this. This is ridiculous. Red Skull is a YouTuber who's currently, speaking, and it seems quite angrily speaking at the viewer in a video called 10 Rules for Life. The linked videos on the side are Chaos and Order, Carl Luger's Genius, and The Feminist Trap. It's not exactly subtle. Jordan Peterson's book is 12 Rules for Life, An Antidote to Chaos, and his second book is 12 More Rules for Life, Beyond Order. For those of you who don't know about the Captain America lore, Hydra was founded as a component of the Nazi war machine, and Red Skull is a German. It later broke off to be its own thing in future stories after the Second World War, but it definitely has a fascist component. So let me get this straight, Marvel. You're saying that Jordan Peterson, a psychologist, somebody who is, by modern political sensibilities, a very generic conservative. Somebody who writes positive messages for men because he believes, in my opinion, rightly so, at least to some extent, that there is not enough, positive energy going towards men right now. There's a lot of focus on toxic masculinity, and let's be honest here, guys, you can't really argue with the existence of toxic masculinity. The wife beater, the tyrannical father, the rapist, the corrupt king, these are all parts of masculinity that are indeed toxic. But there is obviously a positive, non-toxic, wholesome, flourishing masculinity as well. And the problem of toxic masculinity is not solved by becoming feminine, but it is by becoming positively masculine. But anyway, Marvel is comparing Red Skull, the Nazi, to Jordan Peterson, the honestly very mild-mannered person. Here's the full page. Captain America says, "Let me guess, your brother, he disappears into the internet. And when he comes back out, he can't stop talking about his new theory of the world. And that theory comes from one man, Jordan Red Skull Peterson. It's the same for all of them. Young men, weak, looking for purpose. I found the flag, you found the badge, they found the skull." He tells them what they've always longed to hear, that they're secretly great, that the whole world is against them, that if they're truly men, they'll fight back. And bingo, that's their purpose. That's what they live for, and that's what they die for. This page is only presenting Red Skull's position without actually refuting it, because the honest truth is, if you remove all of the avenues for a person to actually, find purpose, find meaning in their lives, they are going to gravitate towards something that's destructive. That seems obvious, right? Like, if there's no longer any virtue in being a good worker, or being a good entrepreneur, or being a good inventor, or being a good father, then why would men play your game? Why wouldn't they just say, "Fuck you, I'll do whatever I want"? If society is failing men, then you cannot blame them when they decide to shift their interest to something that they feel does not fail them. Jordan Peterson's message is largely positive, but this comic says that instead of Jordan Peterson, these people are going towards the Red Skull. So let's listen to the Red Skull's message. What has happened to the men of the world is truly one of the great tragedies of our time. Once the American man was a conqueror. Now he is but a caretaker. And a caretaker of what? He stands for some amorphous dream, a dream of nothing. But what I offer you is more than just some petty dream. More than a life of tending the hearth. No more shall women be summoned to fight your battles. I offer steel for your spine and iron for your gut. I offer you the sword of manhood. Worst part about it is, that's actually not all that objectionable to somebody who's not an insane fucking radical. Like, let's go over it, okay? Once the American man was a conqueror, now he's a caretaker. You could see some negativity in that. I understand. Being a conqueror there's glory in it, but it's also not necessarily good, especially for the conquered peoples. And clearly, we do not really live in an age where colonization is considered acceptable anymore, because liberalism has progressed our morals to that point. So I understand his position. A caretaker of what? He stands for some amorphous dream. A dream of nothing. I mean, Yeah, when you take away every positive thing that people have about themselves, what do you expect happens? What I offer you is more than just some petty dream, more than a life of tending the hearth. No more shall women be summoned to fight your battles. I think this would resonate with people just because there is, a psychological need to go on an adventure, to do something new. Not everything has to be an adventure, but there is definitely a call to adventure. That's the whole point of the hero's journey in storytelling. And also, I've noticed when it comes to the creative spaces, progressives absolutely hate the hero's journey. There is a hatred of heroism on the left because fascists legitimately do glorify heroism, but so do liberals, and they can't tell the difference. I offer steel for your spine and iron for your gut. I offer you the sword of manhood. Again, a positive vision of masculinity is absolutely required. And steel for your spine and iron for your gut, that's not negative, actually. That's actually straight up positive. Sometimes you need to be stoic. Sometimes you need to do what has to be done. And sometimes that steel means that you must object to what you are being told to do because you know it's wrong. This entire speech is presented such that the reader should view it to be negative because it is a critique of power. But power itself is not the problem. In a liberal meritocratic system, competence is the virtue. Power is what you get as a byproduct of that. But the socialist position does not actually think that deep. They don't view competence, and when they do, they don't accept it. They think it's false, so to them it's only power. Of course, Jordan Peterson, being a boomer, let's be honest here guys, he's a little bit disconnected. He has to ask, do I really live in a universe where Ta-Nehisi Coates, is it Coates? I don't know how to pronounce this guy's name, has written a Captain America comic featuring a parody of my ideas as a part of the philosophy of the arch-villain Red Skull. Oh look, Anthony Fantano. Look at that shoe. It fits. I didn't even know about Anthony Fantano until doing research for this video, but apparently back in 2017 he made edgelord anti-SJW content, and presumably because he's a fucking coward, he cucked out and became a socialist. Yeah, and when Anthony Fantano was asked about Jordan Peterson actually being a Nazi, he links a talk between Peterson and Stefan Molyneux, saying that he's talking to a fascist. I don't think Stefan Molyneux's a fascist. Isn't he just like an ANCAP or something? Also, I guess talking with a fascist now makes you a fascist. In support of baseless race and IQ science. Hold on. You do know that you learn in first year university level psychology that IQ is the strongest research that has ever come out of any of the social sciences. Anthony, do you consider reality itself to be fascist? Also, at this point I have to point out, this idea that Nazis are somehow obsessed with IQ science is a complete falsehood. Contradicting common beliefs, National Socialists were opposed to intelligence research. In their view, intelligence research would represent a supremacy of bourgeoisie spirit. Intelligence measurement would be an instrument of the Jewry to fortify its hegemony. Selection in schools, according to intelligence, would stand for a system of examination of Jewish origin, especially the concept of intelligence as a one-dimensional dimension and one common central factor. Because people differed, and therefore intelligence differs, they called for an intelligence measurement according to a national and typological point of view. For Germans, they asked for a measurement of realism. They were opposed to a measurement solely of theoretical intelligence, a measurement of intellectualism. Instead, they favored what they called practical intelligence. Nazi researchers were opposed to the scientific methods of correlation and factor analysis, and believed that general intelligence did not exist. This is not the first time that the Red Skull has basically been used as a mouthpiece to present normal, liberal, or conservative ideas, things that your average person would either agree with or only marginally disagree with, because the writer of the story is so far out there that they actually think these reasonable, normal, everyday positions are fascism. Back during that whole Captain America says Hail Hydra nonsense, that was a meme a few years ago, this was the incarnation of the Red Skull in that story. We grow in number each time I visit. Thank you, my friends, for your courage and dedication to our cause. I have just come from Europe, my homeland, in fact. And you know what I saw there? It was an invading army. These so-called refugees, millions of them, marching across the continent, bringing their fanatical beliefs and their crime with them. They attack our women and bomb our cities. And how do our leaders respond? Do they push them back and enforce the borders, as is our sovereign duty? No, of course not. They say, here, take our food, take our shelter, take our way of life, and then take our lives. Despicable. So it is good to be here, where some men still know how to fight. When I was a young man, there was a great war, and our two countries did not see eye to eye. But all the sides, they all agreed on certain things. The fundamental responsibilities of a nation. Protecting the land through strength. Preserving the heritage and culture of the people, offering them opportunity. Now look at the world today. Look here, at the dead husk that was these United States. How the mighty have fallen. Who is protected, I ask you? On my flight, I was briefed about these brave patriots fighting the government's illegal claims to their land. Who does the land belong to if not the people? This is who your government sees as the transgressors? What about the criminal transgressors who make a mockery of your borders? No, they are protected, of course. But that is only the beginning. Your entire culture is under siege. The principles that your country was founded upon lost in the name of tolerance. Your religion, your beliefs, your sense of community, all tossed aside like trash. And you cannot even speak out against it lest you be called a bigot. And who benefits from all this but the vultures feasting on the carcass, the bankers who stole your homes out from under you, and the politicians they have purchased? Well, let them call you what they will. I know who you truly are. The beginning of a revolution, the first to see the collapse of the old guard and the road to something glorious. The glory of Hydra. Now, if you weren't looking at, the obvious picture of the Red Skull, and you just closed your eyes and tried to think of what political alignment this individual could possibly have been, would you consider him to be a socialist? I mean, possibly. He talks about bankers and purchased politicians. He talks about revolution. He could be a fascist because he talks about the land. He talks about the responsibilities of a nation. He talks about the people. He could also be a liberal because even a properly liberal society has a mandate to establish and enforce borders, to expel illegal immigrants, to defend itself from a foreign invasion if there is one. This comic was published during the migrant crisis that was happening, and to some extent is still happening, back around, I think, 2016. And the Red Skull is expressing the rather normal, rather reasonable conservative position, though he's obviously ramped up the rhetoric a little bit, that nations have a right to exist, to be separate, to have borders, and to control their own immigration policy. And this idea that being anti-migration is fascism is just ridiculous. Yet here we are. There are other times where comics have been co-opted in this way, to be used as a mouthpiece for the writer's stupid political opinions. After all, the Joker might be a mobster and a homicidal maniac, but he's an American. He hates Nazis. For all of his sins, he's not a traitor. It is incredibly stupid. Like, beyond words, to think that all of the terrible stuff that Joker has done across all of his incarnations, and Nazism is where he draws the line. But that is the situation that we find ourselves in. Somebody who is obviously evil has to claim that Nazism is worse than him. Meanwhile, the actual Nazi characters, like the Red Skull, they must present milquetoast liberal takes, because the socialists understand. The fascists aren't their enemy. The fascists are gone. The fascists aren't the one currently standing in their way. The liberals are. And they have no argument against liberalism, so they have to make it seem like fascism. This is ridiculous, but it is, of course, not new. It seems to be a running theme that I'm an old man on this channel, because I am old enough to remember when Dr. Doom shed a tear when 9/11 happened. Here's Dr. Doom's monologue. The story of humanity is not written in towers but in tears, in the common coin of blood and bone, in the voice that speaks within even the worst of us and says this is not right. Because even the worst of us, however scarred, are still human, still feel, still mourn the random death of innocence. This is... Okay, Dr. Doom is like on the level of the Red Skull in terms of being evil and all the heinous shit he's committed over the years, but because of the popular opinion of the 2000s. Of course, Dr. Doom would cry when the Twin Towers collapsed, even though realistically that's something he might actually do himself, being a terrorist. In much the same vein, the Red Skull's most evil fascism has to be boiled down to Jordan Peterson's milquetoast liberal takes, because these people don't understand that... I still can't believe I have to say this, that they're supposed to be making something that's entertaining. And you can have a political message of something that's entertaining, but if you are twisting around the pre-established personalities of these characters for your political point, you have already lost the game. Liberalism is not fascism. Red Skull is not Jordan Peterson. Dr. Doom would not cry at the collapse of the Twin Towers. I miss this Captain America. It doesn't matter what the press says. Doesn't matter what the politicians or the mob say. Doesn't matter if the whole country decides that something wrong is something right. This nation was founded on one principle above all else, the requirement that we stand up for what we believe, no matter the odds or the consequences. When the mob and the press and the whole world tells you to move, your job is to plant yourself like a tree beside the river of truth and tell the whole world, no, you move. In the latest incarnation of Captain America, this is something that Red Skull would say. But you know what, my friends? This is the only Jordan Peterson comic I'm gonna read. What the fuck? Nothing's getting into him. Keep yelling the buzzwords, people. Don't listen to his reasoning. Racist, bigot, Nazi. It's working. Make more noise, comrades. I'm gonna show my tits. Quickly now, punch that fascist in the face. Hear me, creatures of the underworld. The evil archetype. Satan to Christ, Cain to Abel, Loki to Thor, darkness to light, chaos to order. I command you, go home and clean your room. I still personally cannot believe that somebody as normal and as unoffensive as Jordan Peterson has been made out to be a Nazi. I understand why. Like, I can believe it, but like emotionally, viscerally, I can't believe it. I know Sargon's take earlier today was that they have done it because the radical socialists, the leftists, they are so far out to lunch. Liberalism and fascism, even though they are opposing points of view, are two dots off in the distance, and so they look together. That was Sargon's conception of it. And there's some truth to this, but there's more to it, I think. I think there's also active subterfuge here. It's like I said, fascists largely do not exist anymore. It is the liberals who are opposing socialism now. It is the liberals who are the primary enemy of socialism. If there is ever a socialist revolution, it will be the liberals that oppose them. And so the liberals have to be dispatched from their point of view. And yet they have no real argument against liberalism. So anytime they can find some overlapping similarity between liberalism and fascism, that must be chipped off. It must be partitioned away from liberalism. This is why you keep seeing the joke that, like, Hitler was a vegan, therefore vegans are fascists. Hitler breathed air, therefore if you breathe air, you're a fascist. That is what that joke is referring to. The socialist subterfuge to undermine liberalism by constantly calling it fascism, when it is not. Liberalism is not the handmaiden of fascism. Liberalism does not excuse fascism. Liberalism does not lead to fascism. Liberalism is the only true opponent to fascism. And I do believe that HYUK was right when he said that fascism is the stage after socialism once communism has proved itself to be impossible to obtain. But I'll put it in shorter words that I think at least some leftists will appreciate the irony of. Fascism is socialism in decay. Thank you for watching, my friends. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to share it around and do all of the other algorithm positive stuff that the YouTube engagement metrics like. I don't know. Sub for more, or hit up my Patreon or Subscribestar if you want to keep it coming. And be sure to stick around, because I'm putting up a new video every single day. So I'll see you tomorrow. I love you.